So the following tutorial shows the painting of this painting right here. And the point of the tutorial is that I wanted to create something for those of you who haven't really painted structures that much. So I picked a fairly easy house on almost straight on view. And I picked a scene where I changed the sky and added those puffy clouds into the photo. And I go over that a little bit more on the Patreon. But for this tutorial on YouTube, I've sped the video up quite a bit. And we're just going to focus on the basics. All right. So what I do when I'm painting a scene like this, similar to how I would block in a portrait, I put a few darks around the subject, or if it was a portrait, around the face. And then I fill in the background around the figure or the face. And in this case, I'm treating the house like it's a portrait of a house, right? So I want to key in a lot of the middle values around the house. In the grass here, you're going to see me start to key in a few warm colors and a few greenish colors. And this is all stuff that's probably going to be repainted through the process. And I know that, but I'm just keying in the values. I'm actually not as focused on the color. I'm just kind of splashing around. You see how I have like a beige, reddish beige, a yellowish beige, and then a cooler kind of greenish color. They're all the same value. I'm not super concerned with the color, but I am concerned with keeping the value consistent in the grass. And that's because I need these values locked in so I can judge the value of the white house, which is in shadow and looks bright blue. That's another interesting thing when you're painting structures. They're going to appear or take on, especially if they're white, they're going to take on some of that reflected light from the sky. And obviously I've played that blue up in the reference. I increased the saturation because I liked it. So here, let's watch as I actually try to key in that house. One thing to watch out for when you are keying in white in shadow, it's easy to mess the value up or make it way too blue. And in reality, it's probably darker than you think. White in shadow is darker than you think, and it's probably a bit warmer. A lot of my students tend to paint whites in shadow and shift them really cool. So they basically look like a light blue. And really it's because our mind plays tricks on us. So here I tried to key in the roof, the house, the blue part, but I realized I need to key in the roof first to judge the value. So here you can see I've slightly warmed up that blue or grayed it down by adding a little bit of that mud into the blue. And still, I feel like it's probably too vibrant here. Really, what I should be doing at this point is keying in some of the sky so that I can judge the value of the house. All right, now I'm just adding a little bit more of that gray, warm gray into the blue. And it's still, I can tell that the blue part of the house is still too light in value. But you'll see I keep adjusting it and adjusting it. So I have another interesting tutorial that I recently filmed too, and it features a different house and a completely different type of scene. It's a snow scene at night, and here's what it looks like. And that tutorial I think is even more awesome than this one. I really enjoyed it. It's a different technique altogether where you block all the middle values in and you don't block any of the dark accents or any of the details. It's kind of similar to this, but it relies on a lot of other tools like a palette knife and a ruler and a square, all that kind of stuff to do your detailing. All right, anyway, back to this. All right, so for the sky on this, that may look like a blue, but look at the palette. Look at how grayed down my blues are. And now I'm literally just taking the sky blue and I'm putting it down into the house so that the painting has some continuity between the middle ground and the sky there. All right, now I'm darkening everything up. So just like all my other lessons, I paint in these pools because I can shift the color and I can shift everything in value subtly by adding to the pool. And I really like people to get out of that frame of mind of mixing little tiny piles of paint and instead mix a lot of paint and shift that pool. And then you're going to start to see a difference in your color and your values. Everything's going to be a lot more subtle. And that's where the beauty, I think, in oil painting is in the subtlety. All right, so this cloud here, I'm just keying in I painted the cloud a little bit darker and warmer than it appears because I'm going to cut in over the top like you see right now. And see how that gray that I just put down is quite a bit darker than white because I can paint into that gray like I'm doing right now and lighten it. So when you underpaint puffy clouds, paint them in and then paint them in darker or a middle value and then put the lights wet in wet over the top and start pushing the light. But don't paint your white clouds with the brights first. Underpaint them dark. I learned that the hard way. For years I did it the other way, and now clouds are just super easy for me because I look at it that way. I basically look at clouds as warm grays or cool grays, and I block all those in and I ignore all the white highlights until the very end. And then when you pop them in with the palette knife, the clouds pop. All right, so here I'm just going to begin putting a little bit of the detail in, darkening that shadow. Somebody asked me recently, on a recent painting, where is the focal point? I don't see a focal point on this painting. And with paintings, it's kind of a misnomer. There doesn't have to be a focal point. There can be a focal area, or the focal can be whatever your subject is, or whatever got you excited. Maybe it's the specific color in an area or the light. A successful painting basically, it guides the eye around the painting and gives the eye a lot to do. It basically, you slow the eye down or you speed it up where you want to, and you convey whatever you were trying to convey without boring the viewer and having their eyes shoot out of frame. So if you can do that without a specific focal point, it's still a success. And the reason I'm talking about this is because in this painting, there is no focal point. The whole house is the focal area. So by placing these darks right on the roof there, I've now strengthened that focal area. The eye moves there more by placing that dark right along that roof line. There's little tricks like this. If you need to strengthen an area, you put a dark right next to a light, and that'll pop the eye right in that area. So yeah, it all just depends on what you're trying to convey. So in this grass, in the actual lesson on Patreon, which is in real time, I really talk a lot about the warms and cools and keeping the values consistent. Because I have this flat plane of grass in front of the house, if I just paint it flat, it's going to be a boring painting. So by varying the color temperatures and the texture and all that stuff, I'm able to create interest just enough in the foreground to not bore the viewer. There I'm using the paper towel trick where I press the paper towel in and push it down to kind of get some of the glare out of the sideways brush strokes. And again, a lot of this stuff I go over in detail in the actual lessons on the Patreon. They're in real time. They're not sped up. And I'm speaking as I'm painting and teaching in real time. So it's just a lot more that I capture in them. All right, now I'm going to paint this fence post. And it's important when you paint details like this not to go too dark. So let's say you have a figure on the beach. It may look black to you because of it's a figure set against all this light stuff around it. But really, it's probably not even close to black. It just looks that way. And same with fence posts. They're usually going to be dark, but lighter than you probably think. And just like a white cloud, it's actually, in that case, going to be darker than you probably think. So values in general, it just takes time getting used to learning what you're seeing and learning that your eye kind of plays tricks on you and that value and color is all contextual, right? Okay, so at this point, I'm just darkening the shadows there, trying to strengthen the house. Now I've kind of messed up the roof. I went a little too dark, and the roof is starting to look curved. You see that? It doesn't look straight. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit more here and there. All right, using the palette knife just to lay down. Ooh, look at that. Lay down that thick highlight right there on the edge of the house. And that really pops and helps the focal point. Little palette knife work there. In the lesson, I go over how to actually use the palette knife, how to load it up, and then how to clean off the edge so that you know what stroke you're going to get when you put that palette knife down. A lot of people struggle with the palette knife because they don't know these tricks, and they go to use it, and when they put the stroke down, they don't realize that there's like a globule of paint on the edge, and it gives you a stroke that you weren't hoping for, and it messes your painting up. So I go over all that as well. Here I'm using the palette knife to scrape and push the paint around, just create some interesting textures. I'm really into using a variety of tools, paper towels, metal knives, brushes. A lot of this more impressionistic work or, looser kind of work, I like to experiment and have a variety of edges. I get bored personally with people who paint palette knife paintings. I like some of them, but it starts to get redundant and boring, just like paintings with no texture or people that paint all their paintings with a tiny little brush. So I like all that. I'm not disparaging it, but I think the best paintings are when they combine all that stuff together. All right, so I've just wiped out the details on the house, and I'm going to re-put in that window a little bit softer with a softer value. Anyway, thank you for watching this tutorial. We are about wrapping this up. You can watch the full-length tutorial and over 160 other full-length tutorials at patreon.com/DevinMichaelRoberts. And make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube if you like the content that I offer.